The governor told me and the other department heads we have to cut 10% of our budget. You're my 10%.
Oh, no.
So I had quit my job, started going independent, and had nothing at the beginning of the financial crisis. Welcome to the Project Management Happy Hour. Our aim is to share frank and honest discussion about real-world issues in project management, but do it in a way that's not too dry, though it might get a bit salty sometimes. How to quit your job and completely fail as a PM contractor, or not.
So, Kim, I would love to ask you a question. I want to reflect, Kim. I want to reflect on how we are similar and different. I have a curiosity I'd like to ask you about.
I'm ready.
So I went independent last year. Like I quit my corporate job. Technically, it was at the end of 2024, but like I had already made enough money to live that year. So last year was my first full year of being a full-time on my own person. And you got to see me do this in real time.
I did. I saw you go through all the whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, what was it like for you going full-time? Like when did you choose to bid adieu to the corporate world, have a corporate boss, and become your own boss and be a contractor, start your own little tiny business?
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I think the year was 2008, and I had been working off and on with one of my favorite customers that I had ever worked with, and they were fun to work with. We were doing really cool and important work. We just clicked and really loved it, and they saw me as an asset. I loved to work with them, and we had worked on and off for at least a year, I think. And then there was a little bit of break in the action. I went and I did a couple other projects and came back, and they were spinning up for another big project. I think it was going to keep me busy for a year, I think. So I was excited. I was working in a consultancy, and I was working with them to help scope everything out and get it ready. And at some point in that process, my management said, we're actually not going to be able to proceed with this. So we're going to have to say no and politely decline. So sorry, but for various business reasons, we aren't able to do this. And I was crushed. I was really bummed out, and I knew the customer would be really upset. It was awkward for my company, and the timing was important too, because it was 2008. You could see the writing on the wall. This is when people just at the beginning of when the layoffs started.
Yep.
And our organization was, we were doing okay, but we had a lot of layers of management. And actually at that point, I think I had a role as a PMO manager. I think I'd moved up to PMO manager, but I was at some level of management, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall. There are too many layers of management in this company, and I'm on the bottom rung.
So how did you know there were too many layers of management? Like that's something that I don't know if I would have known 15 years ago.
I think the situation was the company was getting ready for growth, and that didn't really quite hit. And so, we were, 100 people, but I think there must have been 4 levels of management. There was me and somebody above me, somebody above him, and then up to the CEO. And that you need to be a big company to support a management infrastructure like that. And I think that's the trajectory things were going until 2008 hit, and it really scuttled a lot of things. And so I saw where I was, and I was getting a little nervous, and I saw this deal come, and I was thinking, gosh, that's a great project. I'd love to go work with them. And I thought at the time, I move out of my management role. I'm going to go deliver this project on behalf of the company and I'll be an individual contributor, which I love to do. But then that was snatched away from me. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do? And so I had kind of the crazy idea, and I went and, when you talk about taking a customer or going and working independently with a customer that your company formerly worked with, there are some very significant legal repercussions for that. So you do not just go do it.
Yeah.
It's not ethical and it is not legal. You'll probably get in big trouble doing that.
Whoops.
But we were all sad about seeing this go. And so I just broached in a casual conversation. I said, look, sorry to see this customer go. It's kind of embarrassing for us. It's bad for them. I also know that we're staffed pretty heavy right now. I can see the utilization numbers. I said, could I solve both of these problems if I just go and take these direct? Is that something you would even consider, or is that beyond the realm of possibility? So they went and they had the conversation. And to my surprise, they came back and said, actually, we'd be okay with that. And what that told me was, first, they're grown-ups. Secondly, my head was probably on the chopping block, right?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. And so it was probably, well, we're going to let him go anyway. So why not let him?
Yeah. Now we don't have to pay a severance, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so to their great credit and to my great luck, they said, nope, go ahead and do that. So I talked to the customer. I said, would you be interested in? And they said, of course. So we got all the contracts set up. I did all my legal paperwork, setting up an LLC, blah, 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 getting ready to go. My last day, my former boss says, hey, I know you're going. I know you got this other gig. Just in case you ever want to do other stuff, would you be interested in being a subcontractor for us in case we need to hire you back on? Because you do great work and you've got some customers and we don't know what the future holds. And I'm like, sure, okay. I won't ever use it, but okay, we'll set that up. And off I went.
Okay. So you got to go work with the customer that you loved and do this like really cool project you were excited about?
And it lasted one meeting.
One meeting?
Yeah. So I had it all lined up and I got my wife on board. Okay, we're going to go independent. Very, very scary. Got a wife, young family. I'm going to go do this independent thing, but it's okay. I got 6 months or a year of work lined up. It's going to be great. I go to get started and I meet with my sponsor and their other sponsor. It was partly funded by the government. And we go meet for coffee. And the guy from the government says, okay, glad to have you on, but there's some news. The government, with the financial things going on, the governor told me and the other department heads we have to cut 10% of our budget. You are my 10%.
Oh, no.
So I had quit my job, started going independent, and had nothing at the beginning of the financial crisis.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's the nightmare situation where you are elated. You're like, I got it. Everything's going to be good. And then what happens is that it all falls through and now you have $0 as of income.
Yeah, I was all, look at me. I got a website and an email address and an LLC and look at, boom, I'm all independent contractor. And then the bottom fell out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's miserable. That must have been terrifying. How did you feel?
Yeah, terrifying is the right word. I don't know if that covers it when I told my wife. But yeah, we have a young family at the time, 3 kids. And, that's pretty scary. And so I called back my former manager and said, hey, do you know how you wanted me to sign that subcontract agreement? Turns out I've got a little more time available than I expected.
Than I thought I would.
And I got so lucky. I literally won the lottery. And he says, okay, well, that's good. Would you want to move your family overseas for a year? And I said, yes. Well, I said, why? Because we had agreed on a rate. And I said, yes, I'll do that.
Okay.
And so off we went for about a year overseas. And it sounds exciting and glamorous, but it was no cakewalk. So we were actually kind of insulated from a lot of the
2008 crisis because you were being paid at the rate you'd agreed to on a year-long contract overseas. Wow. Yeah. You would have been insulated.
I got really, really lucky, but I think it's not pure luck. And I think this goes to illustrate one of the key things when it comes to being independent. It's all about your relationships. If I hadn't built that relationship of trust, if I hadn't been so careful about making sure that my relationships were really important to me and caring for those as I left that company, that would have never happened.
I talked to one of my friends yesterday who is thinking about changing from corporate to contract. And I worked with her for a long time and she's good. And she's done other things while I've known her. She has a completely different career than her day job that she made money from in 2025. She was also teaches her craft at a university, like a talented professional, and she's done good work in with what I've seen her do. And so, with where she's at right now, she's feeling like, she's burnt out, she's exhausted. She's like, nothing good she's like, whenever I was burnt out, I was like, there's nothing good I can do. I'm useless. There's nothing good to happen. And so she can't see what I can see, which is that she already has a network of people. She has a network of people that she could ask for work. And she has a variety of income streams between this side hustle that has nothing to do with her day job. And she has a teaching opportunity. And she has her own portfolio of work within that craft that she can sell on her own. So she could even diversify her income from leaving corporate America. But because she's super burnt out, she's like, well, I'm just going to suck at that too, which is so interesting. Because were you burnt out whenever you wanted to make the choice to leave?
No, I don't think I was burnt out. I was very nervous about the way the company was going. I could do the math. I could see the writing on the wall. We could see what was going on in the economy. I knew I was the bottom rung of way too long a ladder of management. I knew that my clock was probably running.
Okay.
I had a young family I got to take care of. And so, I was.
So you acted early. You were like, I want to be in charge of my destiny.
Yeah. In that case, it wasn't burnout. It was, if no one else is going to look out for me in my career, I got to do something here.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, so your first year is a contract year, subcontracted through your old employer.
Mm-hmm.
What happens after that contract's up? What do you do next?
What I think is important to keep in mind, if you go independent, what I think a lot of people don't think about is they have to realize you are your own salesperson. That's a full-time job. And so you have to always be thinking, what comes after this? Where do I go? And I've seen a lot of behaviors where people who are contractors are very transactional. I don't think the way they go about it is very healthy or very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when I've got a 6-month contract. When I hit month 4, I'm out there looking for other places. And if I get a new gig, I'm going to skip month 6, maybe even month 5 if I get something signed, because I know my contract's coming to the end. Which, as a project manager, you got to be aware that that's what's going through the minds of a lot of your contractors. But my perspective was, I was always lucky. It took a lot of time to develop really good relationships where I was. And so instead of, I got to go somewhere else, I had positioned myself really well. And then I said, okay, well, what additional value can I add here? What do you guys got going on? This project's going to be, what comes after this? What's next for you guys? I see this as a problem. So I was talking with my clients and helping them, not just with the current project, but looking ahead to see what other problems can we solve. And that perpetuated itself for literally years and years. I was doing a lot of that kind of work. It wasn't the only work I did, but it was the biggest, it was the most fun, and it was the most lucrative, really leaning into that. And of course, all these were transacted through the company I subcontracted through. They were not my direct customers because I was subcontracting. But I had been building those relationships, and I helped make those projects happen because I knew that's what was going to keep me working, rather than me trying to go out on the open market.
Okay. So you negotiated a rate whenever you first started that year-long contract. Did you keep that rate for the whole time that you worked with that company overseas, or were you able to increase your rate?
It was a good rate. The thing we negotiated was the per diem, because currency valuations fluctuated. And there were a couple times I said, look, this ain't working for me. I need some help when I was traveling. Mm-hmm. But the rate was really solid and stayed pretty consistent in those instances. So I was pretty good there.
Okay. Good to know that there's other ways to negotiate. right? We don't have to stick with the rate. We could go, if it's on a travel assignment, we could go for per diem. You could also negotiate potentially for more or less hours
Yeah.
and keeping the same rate or increasing a rate. If you're like, I'll keep doing this, but I'm going to do it for less hours at a bigger rate.
Yeah. And you want to be really strategic with your rate because, I mean, something I always did was I always wanted to make sure I was not at the top, but I definitely didn't want to be at the bottom. And that was just at that point in time. And depending on the kind of value you give, sometimes it's better to say, look, you're going to pay me the max and that's what I deserve. And that's what you're going to give me. In that specific environment, it's tough financial times for everybody. I didn't want to make the financial decision hard. So they were paying me a lot, but I was making them a lot of money. So I made sure
A win-win.
it was always a really fair exchange of value. It wasn't just me saying, give me a better rate, give me a better rate. It's me saying, give me a better rate because I'm going to lock in your next project for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you had leverage whenever you needed to talk about the per diem conversation. It was like, hey, this isn't working for me, but I'm working on the next, 6-7 figure deal you're going to make. So gimme. And that was an easy decision. And that's one of those things, where it's like when you're an employee and you're negotiating for a raise, you're not up against what you're valued at and what you're doing. You're actually up against HR and the rules that HR has put in place and how good a negotiator your manager is inside the company. So there'll be companies that put caps on what raises employees can get internally. If you transfer between roles, there can be a cap on how much the raise can be. And I'm sure it's something where even going into getting promoted up through the ranks, that like you're still not going to get the same salary necessarily that you could get from, like, if you want to go from senior manager to director, you may not get the same salary internally at your company that they're advertising outside, because even whenever you go for that bump internally, HR is still going to be like, it's in our best interest to pay you as little as possible. Whereas it's a different negotiation when you're outside the company, because if what you're going to bring in is an additional 6 or 7 figures of revenue, and then you ask for another 5 figures of money for that ratio doesn't matter to them. It's like, yeah, I'll pay you an extra 25 grand a year to get another $1 million worth of business. That is an insane ROI from the company's perspective. So you're really negotiating at a very different level of discussion and leverage at that point than you are if you're internal, because especially in a smaller company, you can still have those conversations. But in a big company, you're up against the systems they put in place to try to prevent people from bloating their own value.
Yeah, the math is a lot easier if you're in a situation like I was, where my services were being resold, because what they pay me is they have to come out of the revenue. And so it's an easy way for them to do math, to say, okay, well, I charge this, I pay this, I'm still making 50%, whatever the number was. That's a no-brainer. Fine, whatever.
Totally.
Just get it done. If you're internal, the calculus is a little bit different.
Totally different. Yeah.
I would like to go back to, you asked me about burnout, and I shared it. My compelling event wasn't so much about burnout, but there was a major change in that area because of all of the stress and strain that was going on at that time. The workplace was not a nice place all the time. There was a lot of strain. There was a lot of stress. People were very, I don't know, I don't want to say catty, but there was a lot of tension, and it really overflowed at the workplace. I think probably for everybody.
Yeah.
And, when you're in low rung of middle management, there can be a lot of drama, right? When people get frustrated and annoyed and stressed out.
God, shout out to the middle managers who listen to this. Middle management is an exhausting, underappreciated job like Amazon's like, we're just going to cut them. And I'm like, that sucks. Like, it sucks for the employees. It sucks. Like, middle managers are important, and it's a very hard, super difficult job to have. So I see you.
Yeah. But what I noticed was after I became a contractor, it really changed the dynamic a lot. And it was just, for me, it happened to be with the same people.
Ooh.
But the dynamic was very, very different, because I knew I had to be very professional and provide great service to them so they could see the value in me. But I was fortunate in that I was giving so much value back to them that I think I got the impression they felt the same way about me. So they didn't want to pay to bring me into petty drama internally. That's not what my job was.
Yeah.
And they wanted to pay respect to me and take care of me so that I could be around and they could use me as a contractor when they needed me or when it made sense for them to do so. So it changed it to a much more professional relationship, which really I wasn't expecting that.
But you are only describing wins from becoming a contractor.
Well, I'll remind you again. There was there was some luck involved, some good timing, but yeah, it got real scary.
I must be just an optimist. I'm like, yeah. I mean, your good timing. I don't know. Like, it was terrible timing. That was 2008. That was probably the worst time to do that. You were on a great project for sure, but like that was probably the worst time to do that, all things considered.
And you know, something that you did and something that I did, I would like to call out for our listeners.
What'd we do?
Because I get asked about going independent contractor all the time. Like in the last 6 to 12 months, I don't know how many times I've been pinged on LinkedIn or got emails or, you know, had great conversations with Happy Hour members. And I even, you know, go out on, I read it once in a while and go out to some of the subreddits out there and I see people asking this and I just go, no, don't do that. They say, I want to go independent contractor. I'm going to go independent because I can make so much money on Upwork or these other services. And like, oh, child, don't do that. Don't do that. Because there's this perception that, oh, when I go independent, going independent is going independent. And you're like the samurai in Yojimbo kind of walking the earth and, you know, doing cool things. But the challenge is that the great opportunities that I was able to get myself into, the great things that you've done, Kate, are because we focused on not being commodity. And that's where a lot of people go wrong is they go, I'll just go independent and I'll just put my name out there as an independent contractor and people will give me money and it'll be great and I'll do whatever I want. It's not like that. If you go, it's a race to the bottom for rate. If you go out as a commodity, you try to get on these services like this, it's very competitive. You can't go about it that way. Or you can, but it's going to be a really hard go and you're going to be struggling. And so I'd say don't, if you're going to consider doing this, you cannot do it and become a commodity and think you're going to come out happy on the end. So that was my story. And Kate, I had a chance to be there with you or kind of listening as you went through it. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey? Because it's really something to watch you go through that.
I mean, it feels like I did the totally opposite thing that you did.
Yeah.
Like you left because you were like, I mean, something similar was like you had somebody you wanted to work for. I had somebody I wanted to work for, but I left because I was so burnt out and I like could not do it anymore. I was like, I don't know how to do this anymore was really what was happening for me. I was like, I'm losing my mind. And I'll also say, since I quit my job in 2024, like I had been applying to places like Lightweight and every job I've ever gotten, like even internal transfers or offers I've gotten since then have been through my network. They have not been through applying online. And we had Kayla Kihas on around this time last year. And she talked about how you have to network to do this. And I'm not going to win the AI screening resume thing. I'm not going to win that. Half of it is because it's a skill that you have to develop. And I don't want to waste my time on that because that's stupid. Like, what a waste of my time. And the other reason is because my experience is so varied. There's a lot of value in being like a specialist PM. Like all you've ever done is, you know, enterprise data migrations, and they want somebody who's done this 100 times and is going to make them feel safe while they do that. And that's not my career. My career is very much, if you have a problem and you need somebody, if you have a problem that you are stuck on, call me. I am the person to call when things are messy, when they're confusing, when there isn't necessarily an easy answer, when it's difficult to prioritize, when stakeholders won't talk to each other. Like that's when you call me, which means I can only get jobs through my reputation because of the amount of times that I have done that and the people that I've worked with. So I wasn't having much luck at like applying online to just like a regular job. And like I did like maybe one interview. God, I did at least a couple interviews where they were like, oh, we want your like InfoSec experience. But I hadn't done InfoSec in like 3 or 4 years. So I was like, oh, let's talk about when we install like a WAN or a firewall. And I was like, I know the protocol. I was like, I don't, you know, it doesn't, because I don't need to know it. I am not the engineer. So I don't live my life being like a SME in these areas. And if you put me back in there, I will work with engineers that will refresh my brain with this stuff. It doesn't matter. I don't need to be an expert in these areas. So like I was not getting all the way to the final interview round in some of these specialist areas because they were like, we want somebody who's done this 100 times, even though I was going to outshine anybody else in terms of like unblocking roadblocks or any other thing, but I wasn't going to be able to be like, here's the Cisco name of the firewall or whatever in that particular interview. So what happened for me was earlier in 2024, somebody had reached out for coaching and support from PM Happy Hour. And I was the better fit between Kim and myself to work with this particular company. And then as the year went on, I just kept adding more value, finding more spots to help with. And in September of 2024, the CEO was like, will you help me? Like, can you come on, part to full time? And I was like, I'm not cheap, but I will help. And like, you have to keep paying this rate that's, over $100 an hour. And she was like, I'll do it. And so I did. And we went on to have a $500,000 Black Friday season, which on just one platform. And on our other marketplaces, we made even more money. And that was all because I came in September and was like, we don't have a plan for Black Friday. And I, never having run an e-commerce Black Friday before, just like pedal to the metal, just pushed for us to be set up for that, pushed for the marketing plan, pushed for the inventory, pushed for the marketplace relationships, like got us into the various marketplace things that we needed to be in. So I wasn't just project manager. I really became projects and operations in what I was doing. And so I just like kind of said yes to whatever was in front of me, as long as it was at the rate that I was after. And I had agreed with the CEO on what the monthly ceiling would be for my invoices. And we did great for the rest of the year, which was awesome. And then that kind of just kept going. And one of the things that happened going into 2025 is the CEO asked me to negotiate a reduction in the cost of the goods that we were selling. And I negotiated a 30% discount on the cost of those goods, which paid for an entire, like at a minimum, paid for an entire year of what she would have paid me. And then I also negotiated with our distributor, a contract to reduce our distribution costs by 20%, which again would have paid for, so that's the second time I've paid for what she was paying me per year. And then I also took on growing a revenue stream in one of our marketplaces. And by the first half of the year, I did all the business we had done on that platform in 2024. By the halfway through 2025, 6 months in, without accounting for Black Friday, we had done all of the business that we did last year. So I probably doubled or tripled the amount of income we were going to make off this other platform. So I did so many things that I was actually able to raise my rate not once, but twice with her because of the amount of value that I was providing to her business. And that was my primary gig in 2025. I also had a couple design and user experience consulting gigs that I sold. And I also sold a project management training to a healthcare company. So I'm also developing a portfolio of work that I can resell over and over again. And you and I did public speaking, which is something where we've been paid to do that before. And that's something I think I want to get paid to do again this year. So I went to go do just whatever I could do to get paid doing. And I was found through project management. Then I did more than that and was able to increase my rate. And then I also started building repeatable services or tools, trainings that I could sell. So that was my 2025 so far.
All right. So at some point in your mind, there was some switch. I'm done. I'm going to find something else. Or was it something you kind of kept running up to the edge to yeah, no, not yet. Yeah, no. What was it? Was it a switch or was it over time?
This is so silly, but I'm going to tie this to my coming out story to myself. But 17 years ago, maybe it was 15. Whenever I realized I didn't know that you could like girls, I thought I had to like boys, which is dumb. I knew people who liked girls, but one of my friends, who I thought was just a friend, but I was like, oh, it's good you don't want to be girlfriends. And she was like, I want to be your girlfriend. Why aren't you my girlfriend? And I was like, oh, somebody wants to be my girlfriend. I could have girlfriend. That's the version of me realizing that I was queer. And the same thing had to happen with me with going independent, which is where somebody said, would you do this for me? And I was like, oh, somebody would have me do this for them as not a full-time employee and I could make enough to live. I guess I could go independent. Like it was not something that I kept walking towards and backing away from. I was just like, la, 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 it's not an option until someone asked. And then I was like, oh, it's really an option. And I just like threw myself into it. So I never toyed with it. I thought I was going to be in corporate for forever. I mean, there's a lot of great things about working for a big company. I was only a consultant in the beginning of my career because corporate America, I mean, it has cycles. It's sort of like booms and busts. So you can like be really busy and then do nothing for like January or December. I say that now, but like it's true. You could just like coast during times of the year. Anytime they're going through a reorg, you can just hang out. You know, your boss can think you're doing a great job, even if you know you're not given 100%. So I didn't think I should leave until I was so miserable and somebody else said, I'd pay you to do this. And that person who asked me was amazing to me every day, like excited to work with me, thought my ideas were great, liked what I brought, appreciated what I brought. So it was also like the opposite work environment that I was in. And that's what made me be like, oh, I would like to do this. This does sound very good.
Kind of want to ask about the mental calculation you had to do because you had a fantastic, I mean, on paper, at least,
sure,
fantastic role at a well-known company that everybody thinks, wow, you know, that's a great company to work for. And, you know, you had some degree of security there or apparent security. And certainly, but there's got to be some mental calculus you've got to do to say, do I stay or should I go?
So for me being super burnt out, my wife was telling me like, you can quit and find another job. That's okay. You know, I'll make more money. We'll figure it out. I don't want you to work there anymore. Like when your spouse is like, you're miserable, you just need to listen. Is my opinion. If you have a loving, healthy relationship with your spouse, listen to your spouse when they say quit is one thing I believe. But like your partner's support, I think is enormous. You and I both have very incredible partners who are really supportive and amazing, who've been behind us at every step of these journeys we've been on. And so definitely a part of the equation is my partner supportive. And I had that. I also had pretty aggressive saver. So I did have a pretty big savings. I do have a pretty big savings that I have not had to touch in order to make this work. So I had enough savings to make me feel comfortable. I had a savings goal that I had wanted to hit and I had hit it. And that made me feel like, okay, well, you hit this goal. Don't move the goalpost again. Just go forward from here. And I don't want to touch that savings. I want it to sit for forever. So that is also motivation to keep things going. And then with the offer from the woman who asked me, I mean, I calculated an aggressive pay cut. I mean, my job on paper was phenomenal. And I was like, to start, I was like, all I need to take home is 10 grand a month. All I need to take home is 10 grand a month and I will be fine. If I bring home 10 grand in revenue, right? That doesn't include getting taxed. If I bring 10 grand in revenue, I can do this. Nothing will be going into savings. I bought a house in California and I have a horse as a hobby. My life is expensive. So just people are like 10 grand, that's so much. I'm like, yeah, but it's very expensive for like the things in my life to stand there and pay the rent or board or mortgage for them. So, but if I can bring that home, I can do it.
Well, you live in SoCal too, so that doesn't go as far as
I do.
Places,
yeah. I live in San Diego, so it's beautiful where I live. My house was expensive, and I'm happy with all my life choices. But I do have a really high amount of money I need to bring home. But like, if you feel like you can't do it, it's like, I mean, I don't know, $10,000 felt feasible to me. You know, if you can charge $125 to $200 an hour, depending on what your skill set is and how long you've been doing this. You can also bring home 10 grand a month without even working full time, which is another goal that I had. And so, you know, you can't go on Upwork and make like, there are people on Upwork with $200 an hour rates. Those rates are for people who are doing like CEO stuff. And like, it's not like you can't do it, but those people also have, you know, portfolios of work that they've done, references and ratings on their things. I view going on Upwork as another version of like the resume race where you're going to have to brand yourself. You're going to have to, you know, so that would be its own skill set that I wouldn't know how to do. So, but if you can charge that rate for yourself, like you can do it is how I did it. So that's how I did my math.
Yeah. I don't want to sound like I talked down about Upwork earlier because we've actually worked with some fantastic people we've met through Upwork and we still do. But I'm saying as a PM, if you think you're just going to go out on a job board as a commodity player and say, hey, here I am, I'm a PM, you're a voice of 10,000. So you need to do more.
Yeah, exactly.
And wow, we could spend probably hours talking about all of our hard lessons learned, tips and tricks, technical things, legal things that you've got to consider. That'd make for a long podcast episode, I think.
It would. And like one of the things too, though, is like, I have not used them, but there are services where like you need to start an LLC. You can pay somebody like $600 to start you an LLC. Like somebody can get you the legal paperwork. It's, that there's a checklist to start a business. You can ask ChatGPT to do that. But I guess if you want to ask us that, we could walk you through the process, like on how to do things. An LLC that runs as an S Corp. So I'm familiar with, having to pay myself a salary and setting up payroll. And none of those details freak me out. Those details freak out the creatives that I work with. They don't bother me. There's taxes that I've got to file every year. And right now I'm like, I don't know if I filed the taxes I was supposed to for last year. There's like an $800 tax I have to pay just because I'm in California for something. I know Kim's like, I'm never doing business in California because there's all kinds of, and there are a lot of requirements, I will say, like for being an S Corp in California. I have to treat myself as a full-on regular employee. Like I have to offer a healthcare plan. I have to offer insurance. I have to offer all kinds of stuff. And there's taxes to consider too. But like there are services that can help with all of that. From the project management perspective, really the most important thing is your network. And like, honestly, after I quit, and I was out there and like connecting with my network, there were people who were like, I'd give you a job. Like you leave. And then people are like, oh, are you free? Like I get you. And it's like, well, I don't know if I'm available. Like, I don't know if I'm available. What are you going to pay me?
Yeah.
What are my hours going to be? Am I have to go into an office? Like those things happen too. So I know it's really challenging because America is so expensive. There's very few people that have a lot in savings and a lot of runway. But if you can get somebody to pay you, to do one side hustle thing, you can go independent, is how I feel about it.
Yeah, and a few people I've spoken with and when we've had on the podcast, that's how they get going. Actually, maybe a couple, but that you start off, you got a little side hustle and you start to build, you're basically market testing. You start to build up a client backlog and start booking some work. And then that's actually a great situation to be in because then you can build your book of business. And then when you're ready on your terms, you can, hopefully pull the trigger.
Yeah. I've worked a lot of corporate jobs. There's always downtime at corporate jobs. It's just not possible to keep a full-time employee like actually really busy all the time. And some of you are listening, you're like, haha, okay, Kate. But like, I've also worked those places and I left because I was tired. You too can leave. You can go find a different corporate job and you could take a pay cut to get an easier job that you would have more time to start your side hustle with, like, which I know is like blasphemous, but like, I don't know, having run companies, my own company, our company, other companies, like you are numbers on a spreadsheet at the end of the day. No one is looking out for your own best interest, especially at these companies. And so we deserve every dollar that we get paid. You deserve more dollars than you're being paid now. And as long as you are doing the job that they hired you for, you are fulfilling your end of the deal. So I'm pretty radical about working for companies. So really big on like, get your bag, get your bag.
Yeah.
So you're sitting here and you're thinking, like, I could do that too. Like, I have a network, and I hate this place, and I don't want to have a boss anymore because having a boss sucks. It sucks to have somebody who's not as smart as me bossing me around, and like, I want to go be in charge of my life. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the most capable person on my team, and I'm not getting what I deserve. If you're ready, you can go to pmhappyhour.com/be free, and you could sign up to be notified when Kim and I make a webinar for starting your own I'm a PM contractor business. We'll go over all of it. We'll go over reaching out to your contacts in your network, the scripts that you can use to ask them for referrals, how you can set up your LLC and your paperwork, like, with as much as we can with our own legal guidance. But like, we'll teach you how to do that, but we won't make it unless you go there. So go to pmhappyhour.com/be free to tell us that you want us to teach you how to be a contractor.
That's right. We both made the jump. And we both learned quite a lot along the way, how to do things right. And there are some enormous pitfalls you have to watch out for. And we can help you avoid some of those things. Honestly, there's maybe not always a good time for it, as I talked about, and there's not necessarily a time that's too bad to do it, but you've got to be ready. And that's what we can help you do if you decide that's the path for you.
Yeah, we'd love to see you there. So pmhappy.com/be free. I'm so excited to make this and have this be here for all of you. Hey, Kim, I want to lead us in a cheers for today.
I'm ready.
May your personal bench be utilized and your clients be ones you look forward to working with in 2026.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. If you liked our show, please leave a review and a comment on iTunes or wherever you get our podcast. Your review really does mean a lot. And if you want to check out our membership site and all of our cool content there, you can check that out at pmhappyhour.com/membership. If you want to talk to us directly about project management, PM consulting, training, or whatever, our contact info is on our website under About Your Hosts, or you can just hit us up on our Facebook site at PM Happy Hour. You'll find we're really pretty easy to get a hold of there. And that's it for today. Good luck with your projects, and we hope to catch you again at the next PM Happy Hour. Cheers.